The ballroom smelled of roses and vanilla. 25 years. A quarter of a century spent building a life with a man I thought I knew better than myself. The chandelier above us sparkled like 1,000 tiny promises, and the music, our song, played softly in the background. I watched him from across the room, his silver hair catching the light, his smile wide and generous as he laughed with our guests. He looked so handsome in that navy suit I'd picked out for him. So proud. So mine. Or so I thought. I remember thinking how lucky I was. How we'd survived everything. The lean years when we ate pasta 5 nights a week, the miscarriages, the arguments that made the walls shake, the teenage rebellions of our children. We'd weathered it all. And here we were, still standing, still together, celebrating a love that had outlasted so many others. The toast was beautiful. Our son spoke about how we were his role models. Our daughter cried happy tears. Friends raised their glasses and spoke of enduring love, of soulmates, of growing old together. I felt warm inside, grateful, blessed even. Then I saw her, Emma, the daughter of our close friends, the Harrisons. 28 years old, bright-eyed, with that kind of youth that seems to glow from the inside. She'd grown up knowing our family, calling me Auntie May since she was 5. She'd been at our dinner table countless times, played with my children, asked me for advice about college and heartbreak. She walked up to my husband. I watched from maybe 15 feet away, holding my champagne glass, mid-conversation with someone whose face I can no longer remember. She said something to him, smiled that radiant smile, and then he kissed her, not on the cheek. Not the quick peck of familial affection. On the lips, soft, lingering, deliberate. His hand came up to cradle her face. Her eyes fluttered closed. The moment stretched like taffy, slow and sickening. The music didn't stop. The world didn't end, but something inside me cracked so loudly I was certain everyone must have heard it. People nearby went quiet. I saw Mrs. Harrison's hand fly to her mouth. Someone dropped a fork. The sound of it hitting the plate echoed in my ears like a gunshot. And me? I smiled. I don't know why. Maybe it was instinct. Decades of being the gracious hostess, the woman who smoothed over awkward moments, who made everyone comfortable. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was because my brain couldn't process what my eyes had just witnessed. So it defaulted to the expression, I knew best. I smiled, raised my glass slightly as if in acknowledgement, and turned back to my conversation. My mouth kept moving. Words came out. I have no idea what I said, but inside, something fundamental had shifted. The foundation of my world, the bedrock I'd built my entire adult life upon, had just revealed itself to be sand. That night, while everyone danced and celebrated 25 years of what they thought was true love, I kept smiling. I posed for photos. I cut the cake. I thanked our guests for coming. I played my part perfectly, but something inside me had already died. And in its place, something else, something cold and quiet and clear, was beginning to grow. I met James when I was 23. He was 25, working construction during the day and taking night classes to finish his degree. I was a secretary at a law firm, dreaming of becoming a paralegal, saving every penny I could. We met at a friend's barbecue. He had paint on his jeans and calluses on his hands, and when he smiled at me, I felt like I'd been waiting my whole life for that exact moment. We talked for hours that night about everything and nothing. His dreams of starting his own construction company, my hopes of making something of myself beyond filing papers, the way we both wanted a big family, a home filled with laughter and Sunday dinners. 3 months later, he proposed with a ring he'd saved 6 months to buy. It was small, simple, but I cried like he'd given me the Hope Diamond. We married in a tiny church with 40 guests and a reception at his parents' house. My dress was borrowed, the cake was homemade, and I'd never been happier. The early years were hard in that beautiful building something way. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment where the heat barely worked in winter. James worked 70-hour weeks. I kept my job and took classes on weekends. We were exhausted and broke and completely in love. When he finally got his contractor's license and landed his first big job, I remember how he came home and spun me around the kitchen until we were both dizzy and laughing. That was the beginning of everything we'd build together, and I do mean together. When James started his company, I was his bookkeeper, his scheduler, his first employee. I answered phones while pregnant with our first child. I made coffee for clients while recovering from my second miscarriage. When he had to fire someone and felt terrible about it, I held him while he cried. We had Michael first, then Emily 3 years later. I remember the weight of each of them in my arms, the way James would come home covered in sawdust and hold them so gently, like they were made of glass. He was a good father then, present, engaged. He coached Michael's little league team. He never missed Emily's dance recitals. I gave up my paralegal dreams to be home with the kids. It wasn't resentment, it was a choice. We both agreed it made sense. His business was growing. Someone needed to be the steady center of our family. So I became that, the maker of lunches, the homework helper, the keeper of schedules and traditions. I poured myself into our home. The house we finally bought when Michael was 7, a fixer-upper in a good school district. I painted every room myself, planted the garden, chose every piece of furniture, made it beautiful on a budget. Every anniversary, James would tell me I was his rock, his partner, the reason he could build his dream because he knew I was building ours at home. I believed him. I remember his laugh, really laugh, not the performance kind. How he'd sing off-key in the shower, the way he'd still grab my hand while we watched TV, even after 20 years. How he'd call me from job sites just to hear my voice. Those memories feel like museum pieces now. Beautiful things behind glass that I can look at but no longer touch. Because every smile, every touch, every "I love you" is now painted with a question mark. If I had known then what his smile was hiding, maybe I wouldn't have built my whole world around it. Maybe I would have kept something back, some part of myself held in reserve. But I didn't. I gave him everything. And for 25 years, I thought he'd given me everything too. I was wrong. The morning after the anniversary party, James slept late. I'd been awake since 5, watching the ceiling, replaying that kiss frame by frame in my mind. Trying to make it mean something else. Trying to convince myself I'd misunderstood. When he finally came downstairs, he was whistling. Whistling. "Great party last night," he said, pouring coffee. "I think everyone had a wonderful time." I watched him over my own cup. Yes, it was memorable. He didn't catch my tone. Or he pretended not to. He kissed my forehead, quick, absent routine, and started talking about a job estimate he needed to finish. That's when I noticed it. The faintest hint of perfume lingering on his collar. Not my perfume. Something sweeter, younger. "I need to run to the office for a few hours," he said. "Saturday paperwork, you know how it is?" It was Sunday. He'd said Sunday. It was Sunday morning. The office was always closed on Sundays. We'd had Sunday family dinners for 25 years. He knew what day it was. "Sure," I said. "Take your time." After he left, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The house felt too quiet, too big. I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway, each second marking something I couldn't name yet. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing things I'd been too trusting to see before. His phone, which used to sit casually on the counter, now went everywhere with him, even to the bathroom. It was always face down. The screen would light up with messages at odd hours, and he'd grab it too quickly, laugh too casually, say it was just work. There were receipts in his car for restaurants we'd never been to. Nice ones, the kind with cloth napkins and wine lists. He started going to the gym. My husband, who'd always said gyms were a waste of money, who'd let his dad bod settle in comfortably over the years, suddenly bought a membership and new workout clothes. He began waking up early to go before work. His clothes smelled different when they came back from wherever he'd really been. That same sweet perfume, sometimes just the ghost of it, like she'd been standing close. Our friends started acting strange around me. Karen would change the subject abruptly. David couldn't make eye contact. At the grocery store, I saw Mrs. Harrison cross to another aisle when she spotted me. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't break down. I just started watching, paying attention to the details I'd overlooked for however long this had been happening. One afternoon, Emily called. "Mom, is everything okay with you and Dad?" My heart dropped. "Why do you ask?" "I don't know. You both seemed off at the party, and Dad's been weird when I call, distracted. Everything's fine, sweetheart. You know your father. Work stress." After we hung up, I sat with the phone in my hand, wondering how many other people could see what I'd been blind to, wondering how long I'd been the sympathetic character in a story everyone else was already whispering about. That evening, I made his favorite dinner. Pot roast with all the fixings. We sat across from each other at the table we'd bought at an estate sale 20 years ago, the one I'd refinished myself. "This is delicious," he said. "Thank you." "You've been quiet lately, have I? Is something wrong?" I looked at him then, really looked at him. At the face I'd woken up next to for 25 years, the man I'd built my entire life around. And I saw a stranger, someone capable of eating my pot roast while lying to my face. Someone who could kiss another woman at our anniversary party and then ask me if something was wrong. "No," I said. "Nothing's wrong." He smiled, relieved, and went back to his dinner. But I had already started making calculations. Quiet, careful calculations about assets and accounts and evidence, about timing and strategy. He thought I was blind, but I was just waiting for the right light to see clearly. I found the messages on a Tuesday. He'd left his laptop open on the kitchen counter when he ran out to grab something from the truck. His email was up, the personal one, not the business account I had access to. A message notification popped up on the screen. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place. E.E. Emma." My hands moved before my brain caught up. I clicked into his inbox, months of messages, hundreds of them, going back almost a year. My vision blurred at the edges, but I kept reading. "You make me feel so alive. She doesn't understand you like I do. Last night was perfect. I wish you didn't have to leave." There were photos, her, them, in hotels I'd never been to, wearing lingerie I'd never seen, smiling the way I used to smile when we were young and everything felt possible. His replies were worse somehow, because they weren't the words of a man who'd made a mistake. They were love letters. "You're the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to me. I wish I'd met you 25 years ago. Soon. I promise. Once things settle down, we'll figure it out." Figure what out? Leaving me? Starting over with a woman young enough to be his daughter? I heard the truck door slam outside. I closed the laptop, walked calmly to the sink, and started washing the breakfast dishes. He came back in. "Sorry, had to grab my measuring tape. Need it for the Morrison job." "No problem," I said, my hands steady in the soapy water. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to him, listening to him breathe, wondering what version of himself he became when he was with her. Did he laugh the same way? Did he tell her the same stories? Did she know he snored when he slept on his back, or that he was allergic to strawberries, or that he cried at his father's funeral so hard I had to hold him up? Did she know she was destroying a life? Or did he tell her I didn't matter anymore, that our marriage was just paper and he was only staying out of obligation? The next day, I did something I'd never done before. I followed him. He'd told me he had a site meeting across town. I waited 5 minutes after he left, then got in my car. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, but I kept going. He didn't go to any job site. He pulled up to a cafe in the Arts District. The kind with outdoor seating and overpriced coffee and young people on laptops. I parked down the street, my heart hammering. And there she was, Emma, standing outside in a sundress that showed off her perfect young body, her hair in a casual ponytail, smiling like she was starring in a romantic movie. He walked up to her, and she jumped into his arms. Actually jumped, wrapping her legs around his waist like a teenager. He spun her around, laughing, and then kissed her, long, deep, passionate. Not stolen or hidden. Right there in public, where anyone could see. Where I could see. He set her down, and they walked inside hand in hand. Through the window, I watched them sit at a corner table. She fed him bites of her pastry. He played with her fingers. They looked at each other the way James and I used to look at each other when the world was new. I sat in my car for 45 minutes, watching my husband be in love with someone else, and something crystallized inside me then. Not just hurt. I'd been hurt. This was different. This was clarity. Cold, sharp, absolute clarity. He wasn't confused. He wasn't having a midlife crisis. He'd made a choice, and he'd chosen to make me the fool. The pathetic wife who didn't know, who kept cooking his dinners and doing his laundry while he built a whole secret life with a woman who probably thought I was just a boring obligation he was too decent to abandon. When I drove home, I wasn't crying. I wasn't breaking. I was planning. That day, I stopped being his wife, and I started becoming his lesson. The transformation happened quietly, invisibly, like ice forming on a pond. You don't see it happening until one morning you wake up and everything has changed. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things or demand explanations. I simply began to move through the world differently. First, I made an appointment with Patricia Chen, the best divorce attorney in the state. She'd been a client of the law firm I worked at decades ago. We'd kept in touch. "May," she said when I sat in her office, "tell me everything." I did. I showed her screenshots of the emails I'd saved, photos of the receipts, a timeline I'd carefully documented of his lies. She listened with the kind of careful attention that made me understand why she never lost. "How do you want to handle this?" she asked. "I want to be smart about it," I said. "Not emotional, smart," she smiled. "Then let's be very smart." Over the next 3 weeks, I quietly moved money from our joint accounts into one only I controlled. Not half. I wasn't stealing, just securing my share before he could do it first. Patricia helped me understand our assets, the business, the house, his retirement accounts, investments I'd forgotten existed. "You're entitled to half of everything built during the marriage," she said. "That includes his company. You were his first employee, his unpaid bookkeeper for years." I'd never thought of it that way, but she was right. I'd built that company as much as he had, just with different tools. I started going through the house, photographing everything of value, documenting what was mine, what was ours, the antique jewelry from my grandmother, the furniture I'd refinished, even our wedding china, bought with money from my first job. James didn't notice any of this. Why would he? I was doing what I always did, managing the household, handling the details, being invisible infrastructure. He was too busy sneaking calls in the garage and lying about late meetings. One night at dinner, he mentioned that maybe we should renew our vows for our 26th anniversary. You know, really celebrate next year. I looked at him across the table. "That's a lovely idea," he seemed pleased. Relieved even, as if my compliance meant he was getting away with it. As if he could have both, his faithful wife and his exciting mistress. That's when I decided on the timing. I called Patricia. "I want to do this on our actual 26th anniversary. Make it a day he'll never forget." "May," she said carefully. "Are you sure? That's dramatic." "I've been quiet and good and understanding for 25 years, I said. "I think I've earned one moment of drama." I planned another party, bigger than the last one. I invited everyone, our friends, his business associates, the Harrisons, our kids. I hired a better caterer, rented a beautiful venue, sent out elegant invitations. James was confused but pleased. "This is generous, May. After last year was so nice, you're going even bigger?" "We have so much to celebrate," I said. The night arrived. The venue was perfect, soft lighting, beautiful flowers, a string quartet playing. I wore a new dress, deep blue, elegant. I'd lost weight over the past months without trying. Stress diet, I suppose. James worked the room like always, shaking hands, laughing loudly. I saw him check his phone several times, texting her probably, telling her he wished she was here instead. Emma wasn't invited. I'd made sure of that. After dinner, I stood and tapped my glass. The room went quiet. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began. My voice was steady, warm. 26 years ago, I married a man I thought I knew. A man I trusted with my life, my dreams, my future. James smiled at me from across the room, proud, oblivious. I built our home. I raised our children. I supported his business. I sacrificed my own ambitions so he could achieve his. And I did it all with love. Real, genuine, faithful love. The room was completely silent now. Some faces looked confused. Others, the ones who knew, looked uncomfortable. But somewhere along the way, my husband decided that wasn't enough. That I wasn't enough. He decided he'd rather kiss a woman young enough to be his daughter at our 25th anniversary party, that he'd rather spend his evenings texting her while sitting next to me on the couch, that he'd rather build a secret life than honor the one we'd built together. James's face had gone white. He set down his drink. So tonight, I want to thank my husband. Thank you, James, for teaching me that even love can rot when left unattended. Thank you for showing me that I was stronger than I ever knew I needed to be. And thank you for making the next part of my life so much easier. I pulled out an envelope from my purse. These are divorce papers. They were filed this morning. You've been served. I placed the envelope on the table in front of me. The house is mine, purchased primarily with my inheritance from my mother, as documented. Your business accounts are frozen pending investigation of marital assets. And I've retained Patricia Chen as my attorney, so I'd suggest you find someone very good. I looked around the room at the shocked faces. At Emily, whose eyes were filled with tears. At Michael, whose jaw was clenched. At our friends, who didn't know where to look. I'm sorry to have used this occasion for such an announcement, but sometimes the truth needs witnesses. I picked up my purse, turned, and walked toward the exit. James found his voice. May, I stopped but didn't turn around. May, please. Can we talk about this privately? We had 26 years to talk, I said. I'm done. When I walked out that night, leaving him standing in the middle of the party I'd planned and paid for, surrounded by people who now knew exactly what kind of man he was, I finally felt free. The first week was the hardest, not because I missed him. I'd already grieved the man I thought he was. But because silence, real silence after 26 years of noise, is deafening. I stayed with Emily for a few days. She'd asked me to, worried about me being alone, but I couldn't stay long. I needed my own space, my own quiet. James tried calling, dozens of times. I didn't answer. He sent texts, desperate at first, then angry, then pleading again. We need to talk. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Can we please fix this? The kids are upset. How could you do this to them? That last one almost made me laugh. How could I do this to them? I blocked his number. Patricia said any communication needed to go through her anyway. His mother called. That was harder. May, honey, what's going on? James says you've left him. Did he tell you why? A pause. He said there was a misunderstanding. Ask him about Emma Harrison, I said quietly. And then ask yourself if that sounds like a misunderstanding. She didn't call back. The thing about small betrayals is how they echo. Once people knew about James and Emma, other stories started surfacing. The secretary at his office who quit suddenly 2 years ago. The business trip to Denver that someone's husband saw him on, but not at any conference. Apparently, I'd been the last to know for a long time. That should have hurt more than it did. But I'd already used up my hurt. Emma disappeared from town. I heard through Karen that her parents sent her to stay with family in Colorado. Whether that was to protect her or to punish her, I didn't know. Didn't care. The interesting thing was how quickly James fell apart without me. His business started having problems. Missed deadlines, billing errors, client complaints. Turns out I'd been doing a lot more to keep things running than anyone realized. All those little administrative things I'd handled from home. The scheduling I'd managed. The clients I'd charmed at company dinners, without me. The well-oiled machine started breaking down. He had to hire an office manager. Then fire her. Then hire another one. Michael told me reluctantly that James looked terrible. He's lost weight. Looks like he hasn't slept in weeks. That's unfortunate, I said. Mom. Michael's voice was careful. Do you think you two could ever... No, he says he's sorry. That it was a stupid mistake, and he wants to make it right. Some mistakes can't be unmade, I said. Some betrayals are too fundamental. Emily was less sympathetic to her father. I can't believe him. I can't believe he threw away everything for some girl my age. It's disgusting. Don't hate him, I said. He's still your father. How are you so calm about this? I thought about that, because I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. The divorce moved forward. James fought me on the business valuation, but Patricia was relentless. We had documentation of every hour I'd worked, every contribution I'd made. The judge wasn't sympathetic to a man who'd cheated on his wife of 26 years with a family friend's daughter. I got the house, half the business assets, and a generous settlement from his retirement accounts. He could keep the company, but he'd have to buy me out. 6 months after that anniversary party, I saw him one last time in court for the final decree. He looked older, tired. The confidence that used to radiate from him had dimmed to something gray and hollow. We sat on opposite sides of the courtroom. When the judge declared us officially divorced, James turned to look at me. I met his eyes. There was no anger in mine, no satisfaction, just a quiet, settled resolution. He mouthed, "I'm sorry." I nodded once. I believed he was sorry. Sorry he got caught. Sorry he'd lost his comfortable life. Sorry things had consequences. But that didn't matter anymore. Outside the courthouse, he tried to approach me. Patricia stepped between us smoothly. "Mr. Peterson, any communication should go through me." "I just want to tell her, through me," Patricia repeated. I touched her arm gently. "It's okay." I looked at James one last time. This man I'd loved since I was 23. This stranger wearing a familiar face. "I hope you find whatever it is you were looking for," I said. "I hope it was worth it, May." "Goodbye, James." I walked away. Patricia beside me, heels clicking on the courthouse steps. The sun was warm on my face. Spring had arrived while I wasn't paying attention. Everything blooming and green and new. "You okay?" Patricia asked. "Yes," I said, and I meant it. He looked at me like a stranger that day, and for the first time, I finally agreed. I bought a small house by the lake. It wasn't grand or impressive. Just 2 bedrooms, a porch that needed work, and a view that made my heart quiet. It was mine, only mine. Every piece of furniture I chose, every color I painted, every decision made by me, for me. My children worried at first. Emily would call every day. "Are you eating? Are you lonely? Do you want me to visit?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Better than fine." And I was. I started a garden, vegetables and herbs, flowers that attracted butterflies. I read books I'd been meaning to get to for years. I took a painting class at the community center and discovered I was terrible at it. But I didn't care. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with over the years. The ones who'd fallen away when my whole life became about being James's wife. We had coffee and wine and long conversations. They told me I seemed different, lighter. "You were always taking care of everyone else," Karen said one afternoon on my new porch. "It's nice to see you taking care of yourself." One Sunday, both kids came for dinner. I made pot roast, the first time since the divorce. We sat around my small table, and Emily said, "This tastes better than I remember." "Same recipe," I said. "No," Michael said quietly. "Mom's different." "That's what tastes better," they asked carefully if I was dating. If I was interested in meeting someone new. "Maybe eventually," I said. "But I'm not lonely. I'm just me." And I'd forgotten how much I actually like her. I've learned things in this aftermath that I wish I'd known at 23. I learned that love shouldn't require you to shrink. That partnership means 2 whole people, not one person disappearing into another's shadow. I learned that trust, once shattered, can't be glued back together with apologies and promises. Some breaks are permanent. I learned that revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply rebuilding yourself, becoming so completely yourself that the person who broke you becomes irrelevant. I learned that you can survive the ending of something you thought would last forever, that you're stronger than you believe, that starting over at 51 isn't tragic, it's brave. Sometimes I think about that kiss. The one at the anniversary party. The moment that cracked my world open. I used to think it was the worst moment of my life. Now I see it as the beginning of my real life. The life where I stopped performing and started being. James tried to reach out last month. An email that got through somehow. He wanted to explain, to help me understand what he'd been going through. I deleted it without reading past the first line. I don't need his explanations. His story is no longer mine to carry. I see Emma sometimes in my mind, young, beautiful, certain she'd won something. I wonder if she knows yet that she didn't win a prize. She got a man who will always be capable of betrayal, who will look at her one day the way he looked at me, not with love, but with restlessness, with the wandering eye of someone who mistakes novelty for depth, but that's not my concern anymore. On my 52nd birthday, I sat on my porch at sunrise with my coffee. watching the lake turn gold. I thought about the woman I was a year ago, the one who smiled at her husband's betrayal because she didn't know what else to do, and I felt grateful to her. For being strong enough to survive, for being smart enough to plan, for being brave enough to walk away. If you're reading this, if you're listening to my story, maybe you're in your own moment of heartbreak. Maybe you're watching your world crack open. Maybe you're wondering if you have the strength to start over. Let me tell you, you do. You are not the love that failed you. You are not the betrayal inflicted upon you. You are not the years you gave to someone who didn't treasure them. You are every morning you choose yourself, every boundary you set, every time you walk away from what hurts you, even when it's hard. Love should never require you to lose yourself. And anyone who asks you to isn't offering love, they're offering a cage. The sweetest revenge is remembering who you were before they broke you, and then becoming someone even better. I'm May. I was married for 26 years to a man who kissed another woman at our anniversary party. I smiled, and then I became free. Did you like my story? Which city are you listening from? I hope wherever you are, you remember your worth, and never ever settle for less than you deserve.